My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and this is 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the simple, strategic, and significant choices that all of us can make in order to be more fully alive. Today, our conversation is actually revisiting one of my previous episodes with my good friend, Dr. Russell Catania, where we talked about these 3 words: be a thermostat. It was a unique episode. It was an interesting conversation about what it looks like to be a thermostat, to set the temperature in a room, as opposed to being a thermometer, where you simply adjust the temperature in the room. It seems like most of our culture are thermometers, people adjusting, comparing, making sure they're doing okay in the presence of others. What does it look like to actually set the temperature in a room? A positive temperature, a vibrant temperature, a temperature without complaining and excuses and defensiveness and so forth. What does it look like to actually be a thermostat that everyone adjusts to? I loved this conversation with my friend Russell, which is why we've included it as a part of this series, the best of 3 words. The principles, the practices still apply today. So listen in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the small, significant, and strategic choices that all of us can make in order to become the very best versions of ourselves. My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and I am the host of 3 Words, and today I am joined by none other than my fantastic friend, Russell Catania.
Always a pleasure.
And today, the 3 words, my friend, are...
Our 3 words today are be a thermostat. And it has nothing to do with the inclement weather that's going to be coming our direction in the next couple of weeks here. But I think it's important to set up this analogy before we talk about it, because it kind of seems like clickbait, doesn't it? We don't really know what this means. And so I just a brief story. As a medical student, as a second year, we're starting to really interact with patients more and more and going into the clinic setting a little bit. So in one of these clinic opportunities, it's kind of a later night, and I'm in charge of some administrative tasks. A dear friend of mine, one of the bridesmaids in my weddings, comes up to me and says, Russell, I noticed recently in these clinics, you really have stopped telling your dad jokes and being that, fun-loving, goofy guy when things are starting to get tough. You seem to really just get super short and concise, and you start to really lose some of that flair that you often show a lot in those like fun social gatherings and when we're talking kind of casually outside of at these busy situations. I think what she could have said in a lot of a shorter way, and it was really eye-opening to me, Russell, you're really acting like a thermometer right now. You're in the boiling water and your mercury is going all the way to the top. You're being reactionary and you're not being proactive. You're identifying problems and complaining about them, and you're not trying to find solutions. And you're not being a leader right now. You're in this administrative space, and instead of keeping calm and setting your own temperature, you're being reactionary. You're being a thermometer. So that's kind of the other side, the black to the white of the thermostat. And so what's a thermostat, right? A thermostat is a character trait and really a great leadership trait where you are able to set the tone, right? You do survey the environment that's around you, but instead of letting it mold you, instead of succumbing to that stress, right? You are able to make the changes and make the choices that can change that environment, that keeps you at the perfect temperature, right? I love falling asleep when it's 70 degrees, right? I do not let the stress of my day make me click the thermostat up to 80 degrees just because I had a bad day, right? I trust that my home will stay at the same temperature because I know that machine can make the changes regardless of what's happening outside in my environment to affect that, right? And so I would love to just have a conversation with you about, how to be that machine in our home, right? How do we make the changes and choices? Why do we even need to be a thermostat in the first place?
To be a thermostat and to set the tone. Well, there's 2 things immediately, even as I hear you speak and as I sit here with you. First of which, it's a brilliant metaphor. I appreciate you introducing that to me and us having this conversation. And secondly, and most importantly, and it's always the case when I'm sitting in this space with you, recording an episode for our Three Words podcast, there's always this transparency. There's this humility about you. There is this teachability where you are willing to share your shortcomings and to be honest and to be real and to be raw. And thank you for being that person, for embodying that person, because I think it makes us all feel comfortable. Because I think if we're honest, even as I listen to you, immediately my mind begins to race. When am I a thermometer simply adapting and becoming more of maybe potentially a negative situation or a negative environment, or how am I actually taking that to the next level? And these are the thoughts that I have as you share, that literally I can disrupt a dysfunctional environment by my very presence, that I can change the culture of potentially a negative or an unhealthy environment by my choices. And it's also, I can reverse negativity in a room by the use of my words. And that's what comes to mind as you talk about this, is this really important idea that I can stand out as opposed to spending energy fitting in.
Completely right. I mean, I think it's so important as, individuals decide that they want to be looked at as a leader. They want to start feeling like a leader. I think for many years in my personal life, I've been looked upon as a leader. I think mostly because I don't mind jumping into the fire, and I enjoy teaching and construction and these elements that I think are in a lot of leaders, right? But this is an area of leadership that it could be last place for me. I am the thermometer of thermometers when it matters. And I think that's the reason I love talking about it, because as I'm so focused on growing to that point of being a thermostat, I have a lot of perspective about what it means to be really like reactionary when it shouldn't be that way. And so, I think it's great to be in that position, right? Where you can look up and see, oh, this is where I need to start going. And I've been at rock bottom sometimes. And even recently where it's so easy, even as the environment around us currently is COVID-19, very important election, in my opinion, and a lot of other personal situations. We've all, no personal situation is unique to us, but we've all gone through something very similar, just in different flavors. But how do we just take that situation and not be reactionary, right? And so what are those changes that we can make?
And you said it. I mean, do I embody the negativity around me, or do I begin to change it? Do I embody the fear, or do I begin to address it? And I love, again, because here at Three Words and DMB coaching, it's all about proactivity. It's all about choices. And what I'm also thinking about is that peer pressure, it's real, but also it can be both negative or positive. I mean, peer pressure, we tend to want to kind of adapt to what we're feeling and experiencing and fitting in. But if you begin to bring in positivity and perspective and energy and an attitude that says, let's go, that kind of peer pressure is contagious. I mean, complaining is contagious. Right. Grumbling is contagious. Negativity is contagious. So why not come in as a full cup? Because remember, empty cups can't pour. And so even as you talk about this notion of actually wanting to show up as a thermostat as opposed to a thermometer, what I'm thinking about is you need to make sure you're showing up a full cup, because empty cups don't pour, and as opposed to being bone dry. And because you're naturally, if you come in exhausted and depleted and sleepless or not ready with your attitude or energy, chances are you will begin to quickly move into that thermometer role as opposed to the thermostat.
Totally. Yeah. And we talk about choices and change. I mean, our conversations together have been quit your complaining, right? We've talked about changing our mind. And so these are all, I feel like these have all worked up to this episode. Have you? Okay. You know what I mean? For sure. Where we are, to be the thermostat is to is to be the person that's changing the situation. It is almost a responsibility, right? And that makes sense, right? Because leaders have that responsibility. We are as future leaders and as leaders that are constantly growing, we want to be the person that people can come to when things are boiling.
Yeah.
And we want to learn those skills that turn things back down to room temperature.
And when things are negative or when things are fearful or when things are dysfunctional, there's no judgment there. We don't come in and point fingers and judge. But we say, let's rally, a thermostat, let's rally together. Let's let's come together out of this situation and turn this into a more positive situation. I'm just curious though. Let's talk as we wrap up our podcast episode with practicalities. Like, I work with sports teams and I work with fraternities and sororities on the college campus. And as I think about fraternities, sororities, sports teams, organizations, corporate America, I think about neighborhoods, networks, families, friendship circles. What does it look like? I mean, let's brainstorm together. What does it look like in those situations to be a thermostat and not a thermometer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're the quarterback of the Bowling Green State University football team and you're coming off of a game where you didn't feel good, right? You could be the quarterback that reacts to that locker room tension at the end. Who dropped the pass that could have won the game? Who missed that block? Or you could be that individual that just comes together and says, how about we just, let's just grab a pizza right now. Let's just take a breath. What just happened, but let's go down to room temperature and then let's come back on Monday and we'll just, we'll do our drills because we lost and then we'll figure out how to win next game. It's not being the individual that, just starts to feel sorry for yourself and starts to be reactionary. Everyone else is blaming. Let's blame right now. Let's start getting mad. Let's start throwing our cleats. If you're the president of a sorority like my fiance was, and there has been, tension because of a bad year of recruitment, maybe, how did my fiance turn things down to room temperature? Let's just get together and let's just have a sisterhood event where we all just come together and we, watch a movie and we make fall decorations for our sorority house. And before you know it, everyone's hugging instead of blaming each other,
And I think about the workplace. If you go in and it's a negative space and you begin to go office to office, cubicle to cubicle and begin to affirm people, express appreciation to people, celebrate individuals' accomplishments, or that's going to actually create a thermostat effect. You're going to bring it to the temperature that it should be, whether that's up or down, if it's hot or cold. I'm also thinking when I come home each day from campus or when I'm coming back from a business trip and I don't know what the mood of the home is going to feel like. Do I adapt to the mood if it's a little bit tense or whiny? Because, I got some kids in the house that may not be always upbeat, right?
Sure.
And so, or do I actually begin to turn it? And I begin to adjust the temperature and the mood of the house by my presence. Do I adapt to it? Or do I actually accentuate maybe different attitudes and different activities? And I think if dad shows up and he's in a fantastic mood, I'm going to change the temperature of the home. If I come in even neutral, quite honestly, and begin to just adjust to whatever's there, that may or may not go well. Yeah. So again, I'm thinking about family. We mentioned the sorority. We mentioned workplaces. We mentioned sports teams. But what I'm hearing you say more than anything else is that I have to take ownership.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I have to take responsibility instead of saying, this is such a negative workplace. Or, things in this particular organization, they're just so, there's lots of downers in the room. Instead of saying, regardless of what is out there, regardless of the circumstances of any particular space, I'm going to step in and make different choices. Upbeat choices, positive perspective, affirming interactions. Again, not in judgment, because again, that's the tendency is to be like, you guys need to stop whining. You need to stop complaining. But actually just, and I've said this, 1,000 times before, we never want to express out loud we are not embodying.
Right.
And so I think what you're suggesting with being a thermostat is that we actually are stepping into spaces and embodying those things. Wow. What a fantastic conversation, Russell. And again, thanks for your transparency.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks for your realness. I mean, obviously, I can't imagine a scenario where you are going in and actually being a thermometer. I would imagine every place you walk, at least as I've interacted with you, you have been a thermostat and you have continued to create a tone and to set a tone and to facilitate a space that's just so positive and so upbeat. So I'm proud to be your friend. And I know that those who know you would say the same, but for all of us, right? Me included, these are challenging times. That's why we're socially distanced here in the studio. These are challenging times, COVID, racial inequality, an awakening of social justice. There's so many things happening in our world that, man, are so hard. If there's ever a time for all of us, our listeners and our viewers, to step up to the plate, if I can use that sports analogy since we talked about sports, to step up to the plate and to be a thermostat, it is now. For life coaching, consulting services, or to hire a keynote speaker, please visit dmbcoaching.com.